there's several more changes that we're going to be making in there as well. So leasing of police and fleet vehicles. Chief Gross and I have met three times now with Enterprise. Enterprise has a segment of their business where they do this for municipalities. One of the challenges we may run into is that the fleet that they would undertake to make it a good project for them to do, we might not be big enough. We're going to find out. We've discussed with them our police fleet, and they would be able to give us the cars that we needed. And I think that as far as if I'm remembering this correctly, the number that they could turn over for us would be good, but we need to see where the rest of our vehicles fit in to determine if it's something they're willing to take on as well. So we'll have more information for you on that, but it is something that we are looking into. The fleet would be replaced, every 2 to 3 years, as opposed to us exhausting our vehicles till like their end of life. Essentially because we've taken on a car payment as opposed to a lease payment. So as that information becomes available, we will make sure that we get that to you.
That's non-specialized vehicles?
It's a combo. It can be a combination of non-specialized and specialized vehicles.
And that Public Works, Fire, Police?
Yes, they want to take a look at our entire fleet of vehicles. And they may not be able to help us with every single one, but their goal is to get as many of our vehicles into this lease program as they can. And it wouldn't necessarily be all at once. And there are some good incentives, the vehicles that we own, there is some trade-in value to them, just like a regular lease there would be. So
do we have an idea of anticipated savings or a timeline of when we think we could have
meet with them on August 27th, and I think they're gonna present some numbers to us. They have a copy of police fleet, and they're gonna base the numbers just on the police fleet for right now. We don't want to go village wide yet. We wanted to see one if it was affordable just for the police department, and then if it is and it's worthwhile, maybe the commission wanted or village administrator wanted, it's worth, we would try to go system wide.
Does it make sense from their behalf if we had everything included for the original sit down? If it makes more sense, we get a better price because we've got fire department involved and we've got public works involved.
So that's how they asked us to come in. So they came in on the first time and they gave us a big presentation on what it was that they could offer. And then the second time they came in and they asked a little bit more about our needs. And so this third meeting, they're coming back and they've said to us, we're going to sit down and talk to you specifically about the police fleet while we gather up some more information. Does anybody else have any questions?
Something worth doing.
Yes, we definitely want to make sure we have the information before we make a decision, but it could be something that works.
Would they have specialized vehicles like some salaries, like there are bucket trucks?
Yes. One thing we did was bigger rigs there.
Right.
Okay, crossing guards. So this is something that we wanted to bring to your attention. So the crossing guard program is run through the Village of Forest Park. We split the costs of the crossing guards with District 91, 50-50. But the administration of the program falls solely on the police department. That administration of the program over the last several years has become extremely challenging for a couple of reasons. One, it's difficult. It can be difficult to find crossing guards. Two, the crossing guards that are interested tend to be older residents, older people. And so the challenges that they have as far as dealing with temperature changes when it's hot, the beginning and the end of school year, or when it's cold in the middle of winter, tends to leave us with streets that are not attended to. Police department, when they can, will step in and try to take those corners. But one, we're short on manpower, and two, it takes somebody off the street. And while it may seem like they're on the street, they have to leave if they get called. to attend to something, or we can't fill that spot if they are on a call, and dealing with something else. So we're running into challenges, just actually having full staffing for the crossing guards. And then the other issue we're seeing is our workman's comp liability, has increased. And I found out this week that our crossing guards have the same liability as a police officer. So we're paying higher rates on the crossing guards because of what they do. And they're the exact same as if you were a sworn police officer. So, those costs are incorporated into the administration of the program. So one of the things that the council can consider is whether or not the village wants to continue administering the crossing guard program. Or if we would like to ask the school district to reconsider, and take that program over.
Sure, if I may.
Sure.
Chief, the numbers that you presented, since we're administrating the program, are those administrative costs and the burden on the rest of staff in? They're
It's
not.
just that it's the salaries, uniform costs.
Okay, so it's probably quite a bit more.
And we do invoice the school district, for the time, if it's a patrol officer or if it's a PEO, for whatever hour that they filled in. We do.
At that rate.
We do pass that on. Yeah, that's not shown in these
What about the
numbers.
administrative costs of your time and? Yeah, so for me, we're talking over 30 grand a year, which is just the Village of Forest Park's piece of that or portion of that, which after listening to here is probably inflated. It's probably closer to like 40 grand or more.
This doesn't include payroll taxes. I think, right? So it doesn't include the payroll taxes that the employer pays. Workers' comp, insurance coverage either, unemployment. Yeah, so you could probably bump that up to like say 50,000.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I know that doesn't, I'm sure the District 91 won't be happy with that, but I've seen their budget. And I see what percentage of the tax bill they get, and for us to, going through your presentation to think that we could absorb $50,000 to burden not the police department, but all of your time as staff, seems slightly irresponsible. I think it absolutely should be kicked back to D90.
Why are we in this shared agreement? Like, is it just out of the kindness of our hearts that we're, participating? Like, how did this start? What's the rationale behind it? Do most towns do it this way? Like, I
I've
don't.
been here 20 years and it's been
It's
the
always
same
been
way.
like
I
that.
don't know how it started.
I think it's been shared as far as I know from the time as long as I've been here, if not longer. I tried to kick it back to the school district when I became chief, or right before I became chief. So we did sign some kind of agreement with them for the 50-50 split. And I did pull other police departments in the area through an organization I'm with, West Suburban Chiefs. And it's just a mixed pool. Some police departments fully manage it, some school districts fully manage it. Some police departments manage it, but use an outside source like Andy Frame is a crossing guard company. Some school districts use an Andy Frame. So it just depends on the municipality and what their census are. When I did send it out, there were, I think it was Elmwood Park and one other chief asked me if you're able to get rid of this program, please let me know how you do it, because they're getting hit with workman's comp claims. If somebody gets hit by a car or has a slip and fall, so.
But there are some towns that just the school district pays, that
What-
the police department has
Yes,
no.
what I did a poll, I know that. 4 years ago, maybe.
So that's my understanding also that we have a 30-day,
So
there's 30-day language in the contract. So if we wanted to take action, we would have to let them know now because we're quickly approaching the school year.
that's if we wanted to take action within 30 days. Yeah, we need to give them at least 30 days. So a couple of things are at play here is one, the timing of it. When do you want to, if you want to terminate the contract, and two, when you would want to do that. Do you want to do that effective for this school year? You want to, give them a little bit of time to kind of figure it out. There are a couple of things that we would need direction on.
Well, I think we can be good partners because they're a taxing body in our village. But I think it makes sense to talk to them about how we have exposure that and resources that we're using that we need to, you know, especially while our police department is understaffed, that we really need to work with them to identify a date that they can take on the program.
Yeah, I think it's fiscally irresponsible for us to continue doing this when, you know, we look at how our general fund is over $4 million, has an over $4 million deficit, plus we owe over 2 million back to the TIF fund from the general fund. I think we just can't continue to support it. But I do want to be a good partner and
So why don't we be a good partner, terminate the contract and tell them and give them a date and we can supply resources in the form of crossing guards until they can get a contract with this, like an Andy Fran. moving forward. We can maybe have kind of some kind of language in there. If they can't get it done before the school year, we can give them a week or two. I can't imagine to get 5 schools, I'm sorry, 4 schools.
So I will say, we often have a challenge getting enough, like hiring our own crossing guards, even at the beginning of the school year. So we have our returnees. And then we have people who, you know, choose not to return and in turn, trying to find people to fill those spots. It typically ends up being our police department that fills in until we get those people. So I'd like to say it's really easy to get people to, you know, be crossing guards, but you have to remember it's what, an hour and a half in the morning
Too much.
and then an hour and a half in the afternoon.
what sounds realistic to you, Michelle? Since-
Well, we have the general idea that we'd like to talk to them about this and it's something that we need to do. And we can have staff follow up. Okay, that. We need, so the policy or the idea is there and staff can implement there.
So that would
Giving them a reasonable amount. Giving them a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, so if we start the school year off administering the crossing guard program, we're gonna have to hire to fill, whether it's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So, you know, I think if we're talking about being good partners in the community, you know, we also hire these crossing guards who are residents. And so, you know, we're not only going to be terminating a contract with another taxing body, we're going to be terminating employment for people who have counted on us. So I think being able to give an ample amount of time for them to figure out that,
We can think that through.
we can
Maybe
think
they
that
could
through.
Transition to the district instead of the village.
Yeah.
The same people that want us to. you know,
Yeah,
still
well,
do it.
that would be on the school district to manage on that portion of it.
We don't have to hammer all that
yeah.
in here.
I mean, we budgeted for it for this year, so, you know, financially, it's something that we are planning on undertaking. But I would certainly, entertain the conversation and, you know, saying to the school district, this is something that we, you know, may not be able to do or cannot, continue to do starting, you know, at the, for the beginning of next school year, for example. So that gives them ample time to figure out what their options are, whether or not they want to undertake it and take on the liability of hiring crossing guards, or if they want to outsource it to somebody, you know, under their budget. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to see something a little more rigid in terms of what our plan of attack is, right? Maybe we're gonna have to dig in a little bit, right? You know, we have to, I'm not saying to be insensitive or any of that, but let's have a plan, whatever that means. We're gonna talk to them on Monday. We're gonna tell them we can't afford to do this. We're gonna kick it over to them. And I mean, we just need to have, we can't be soft in our approach to some of these budget discussions because that's what gets us in trouble, right? In terms of services, the things that we do. So when it comes up, we have to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of chasing down these potential savings or sources of revenue.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that everybody seems to be in agreement that we need to have a conversation with District 91 about the continuation of the village administrating this program. But do you want me to see how long it would take for them to be able to flip this? And if they come back and they say, oh yeah, we can flip this in the next 20 days, then, you know, we can move forward with that. If they come back and say, you know, hey, we're gonna need a couple months to figure this out, do the research, come up with a contract with somebody, I'll come back to the council and let everybody know.
Sure, and if that's the case, since we've incurred the administrative fees that are not billed to the district, then I also recommend upping the ante to less or more than 50% of the cost. That the school district 91 would pay more than 50% of the cost. To help offset those soft
think-
I
costs.
think
Into
though,
the
that's
weeds
I'd have to look and
we don't
see
have
what
to
the
worry about
agreement
it.
is. I mean, if we have an agreement
We
that
have a
states.
long
50,
way,
Yeah,
so let's keep
okay.
going.
So I'll follow up with, I will follow up with District 91 this week, so that I can get back to you guys with some more information.
Sure.
Okay, flood grant program, I, unless anybody has any strong feelings about it, I did zero it out in the budget for this year, with the intention of pausing it. And, we can see where we're at next year, and if we can fiscally, take it on next year, we can certainly, restart the program up. My recommendation would be to zero this out, hang on to any applications that come in. And anybody who applies this year can go to the front of the pile, when we, if we decide to start this over again, in the future.
I'm fine with a temporary.
Yeah.
A lot of big water related
We do.
things to deal with, but I do think it's a good program and
It is.
cost for that stuff just got more expensive, so it is nice to get thought to residents.
We in agreement? Okay, and then, leaf pickup. So I'm gonna pull up a chart here for this.
So I think, leaf pickup is part of, our renegotiation with our garbage leaf and waste hauler.
So the pickup of it would be the yard waste portion of it. This number actually accounts for Public Works's total cost incurred. So when the leaves are swept into the street and we have to send the street sweeper in and they make the big piles and we have to collect them and then we have to dump them. So this is where we had a town hall last year. And we got a lot of feedback from residents who, they had some concerns with having to bag their own leaves. We have residents who are elderly that they just can't do it. They can't do it themselves and they don't have the means to hire somebody to do it. We have people who have large lots. They have trees. The trees here in Forest Park are mature. They drop a lot of leaves in the fall. So we got a lot of feedback on how people felt about having to bag their own leaves. And so last year we tried, and it happened kind of real quickly. I will be the first to say that, definitely the campaign that we took to get people to bag more leaves was it wasn't aggressive. We just tried to get the word out there. We are hoping that, bottom line is we still have to sweep for leaves. Because if we don't, just the leaves that naturally fall in the parkway, are going to clog up our sewers. And so we have to that is still a service we have to provide. But if there is a way that we can keep the leaves out of the gutter by campaigning to have people either compost their leaves, mow their leaves into the grass, leave them there, bag them up. As Commissioner Mellon Ragovan stated, our current garbage contract allows us to have unlimited paper bags. So for those who are capable of bagging, and encouraging people to continue to doing that, if we can reduce the amount of tonnage that we had 174 tons of leaves that we dumped last year. So if we can reduce that in some way, then we also reduce the amount of time needed to pick up those leaves. And we can reduce some of those costs. But it costs $100,000 a year to pick up the leaves in our town called Forest Park. So it's a big number, certainly. We're gonna have to do it regardless. But if we can lower that number through, we can take on a bit more of an aggressive campaign this year to encourage people to bag, compost, mulch.
I like the idea of campaign. I think you have, people these days are just adjusting to the idea of a different kind of reality. The approaches of sustainability. Individual responsibility in terms of taking care of their yards, It's evidence about the garden walk. Just about the participation we have.
I've also been trying to wrap my head around, you know, how do we help people who are physically unable to bag leaves. Like, if you asked me to bag my leaves, I couldn't do it. So, but there's a lot of money out there for workforce development. Like teens who are off for the holidays or things like that. Helping seniors. You know, we have an angels,
The Snow
snow angel
Angels.
program. We can,
We might have to apply to the township. for some funding
Right.
for Another citizens.
so this might be one of those programs that we look for grant funding.
I'm just curious, it seems like the labor intense part for the leaves on the lawn would be raking them and making all those leaves go from the yard to the street. Right? So those folks that are elderly or don't have the ability to put them into a bag, how do they get them from the yard to the street?
They may not be putting them in the street. They
Oh.
may not be
They
doing
just-
anything with them, but they blow, and so then they end up in the street.
Yeah.
And so the idea would be for people to bag their leaves so that they're not blowing all over the
Yeah.
place.
Or having
Yeah.
somebody come by and bag them for them.
Breaking and blowing leaves is still easier than lifting them and putting them into those giant bags and then keeping a 50-pound bag of leaves. So,
Yeah.
But I think it's a multi-pronged approach. Definitely leaning into like the leaves. I mean, we get so many that we leave a bunch and we're still removing, you know, several bags, but, you know, just educational, you know, aspects there with the sustainability and then just letting people know that they paid for this already. Like you were already paying to have bags of leaves taken, so you're kind of paying for it twice.
That's right.
So like, let's be utilizing this, you know, service, unlimited bags. You know, I think we could probably do a little bit of a bag drive, you know, while supplies last, folks can come pick them up. Maybe a certain amount per household or something, just to kick it off and get people sort of introduced to the idea that maybe haven't been doing that. But yeah, I think we can concerted effort to, you know, at least reduce the amount of folks actually being into this.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the end of our list for reduction of expenses. Does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about before we talk about revenue?
Oh, the reduction of services, I don't remember, I thought we talked about supporting CTA with EMS. Did we get any answers from the CTA about helping to offset our cost of the visits that we make, that hundreds of thousands of dollars it costs us annually?
We're still working on so the offer that they gave, initially was similar to, you know, they give us money for the police department to do extra duty at the CTA. We're still trying to figure out how we could utilize extra funding like that, because we also have a personnel shortage. And it wouldn't be an extra duty. We can't just stick one paramedic over there. We also don't have an ambulance. So, we're trying to work through some of the option that they gave us to see, they weren't really willing to entertain the idea of a private ambulance, but if they're willing to support us financially to help with some of that, we'd like to take advantage of that, I guess, but we're still trying to figure out how to make that work.
That's,
So
that's
we're-
part of the legislation. We sent language to be part of the legislation that was a Senate bill that would require them to have additional evidence. They didn't like the language. But the Senate included it in the bill that they passed. But the House has a different bill. And the House bill pretty much watered down the big book form. They expressly asked for an ambulance with advanced life safety capability nightly between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. We expected the hours to be reduced. I was at a meeting the other day with the speaker. And I asked him what the House bill includes. And without going into specifics, he says it addresses the rider experience. And I believe they have something in there intended to cut down our budget, but he just will not go into the specifics about this.
So we have no update then on reimbursement. So separate from them having to provide an ambulance, we were also looking at reimbursement for the large number of calls that we have to make to, you know, the green and blue line stations that end in Forest Park. Is there any update of that?
That really wasn't part of the discussion.
Right, but I'm just looking for an update aside. from this.
We don't have anything in place at the moment that would require the CTA to reimburse us. It's a bigger, it's a bigger issue to tackle. And we've talked about how, like, you know, there's a couple different things in Forest Park that, you know, can we do impact fees? But that is something that's gonna be a bigger conversation that, we've started on the small level in Village Hall. You know, we have to figure out a way how to escalate that, to the next level to get CTA, more involved with that. Anything else as far as expenses? Okay, all right, so, increasing revenue discussion. All right, we'll start with the places of eating tax. We've obviously heard today from several people in the audience, so I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor. I do have some information that I can pull up, but I will open the discussion up to the council.
Okay. I'm gonna start off by speaking directly to the business owners here. And I think I know all of you. I know Dexter, you don't actually have this kind of business. And Lori and Joanna, you're here, and Mr. Watts and Joe and Dennis was here. So, you know, it sucks, honestly, that we have to be sitting here and even talking about maybe putting this tax in place that's gonna impact your businesses. And I can say for myself, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for the rest of the council, although I'm not, I'm speaking for myself when I say that anything that's gonna make your livelihood more difficult is not something that I even really wanna sit here and talk about. Like, it's not a good place for me to be in. It's not a good place for you guys to be in. And I know that for some of you, you know, you've lost a lot of other stuff over the years too here in this town. You had video gaming for a while, and that was a very valuable source of revenue that was taken away by the resident led. Not, you know, not by the village, but still lost that. That was horrible. And then, you know, you lost bar hours, which was horrible too. So this probably feels like, it probably is kind of like just adding big insult to injury. And I get that, and I wanna make it really clear that, like, I see that and I feel that, and I understand that. And if there were any way to deliver all the services that we need to deliver to our residents and fund our pensions and pay our staff what they deserve, we wouldn't be sitting here even talking about this. But the fact is, you know, I think everyone here has learned, we're not in a real great position financially. You know, we can talk about funds and, you know, transferring money around, but the fact is, you know, we're $4 million in the hole in our general fund, and we had to borrow from our TIF fund, which is a restricted development money, which it's legal for us to do that, right? To plug a hole that we have in just running our village, but it's not sustainable. And we can't keep doing that. And it's not responsible for us sitting up here to say, we can keep doing that, we can keep borrowing, we can keep moving money around. It's just, it's not okay for us to keep doing that. And it's not gonna ultimately be good for the business community or for the residents or for anybody. Our budget is really lean. When we first we first got the budget, you know, I sat down and I said, oh, I'm gonna figure out how to cut all this money, and I'm gonna save us, you know, $1 million, and I can do it. And there just isn't places to cut. You know, I thought to myself, oh, Maria, you're smarter than everyone else. You can make this work. And we're not overspending. You know, a lot of people out there say, you know, the village just needs to cut what they're spending. We're not spending that much. We're spending what we need to spend, and really, honestly, nothing more. And so that's why we're here even just talking about the places of eating tax, you know, a couple things I want to say about it. It's not just this like out of left field proposal. A lot of other towns are already doing it. Like towns around here like Lombard and Brookfield and Riverside and North Riverside. And I'll be honest, I haven't spoken to businesses there to see how it's impacted them. I'm sure that it has. But it isn't something completely new or different that nobody else is doing and only we want to do. It's a standard tool that other municipalities use to try to stabilize their finances. And that's trying to do it without shifting the burden onto property owners. So it is shifting the burden onto business owners. So, you know, how do we balance those needs? And will never sit here and say to any of you guys that it wouldn't be a burden on you, and it wouldn't be terrible, but we also have a burden here within the village, and that burden is to our, you know, moral and legal obligation to fund our pensions, and it's on getting, you know, the fire equipment that we need for our first responders, and it's on, you know, figuring out the leaf collection and all these other things that we have to do. You know, a resident wrote in and talked about offering business incentives, you know, for businesses. We can't do those things without more revenue. We can't do these extra things that we really want to do as a town if we can't, you know, if we're in a deficit, if we're in a hole. And so that's why we're here right now. You know, I feel like sometimes as a council, even recently with the zoning rewrites, you know, the majority votes to turn down something that could help development, you know, and here we're talking about, you know, taking an opportunity of something that could bring in revenue, but now it's going to impact the businesses. I think it's a no-win situation for us. And at some point, you know, we sit here as a council year after year and talk about how we're going to increase revenue, but then we've never actually done it. So I don't know if this is the right solution. I know it's not an ideal solution, but I want to say that we can't continue the way that we're going financially. We need to get ourselves in a healthier position.
Any other comments?
Since we were addressed, do we have a right to say something right now or no?
No, this is,
So. I have a suggestion. I don't disagree with much of what you said, but pretty much I agree with everything. you said. The fact is we're trying to chase forms of revenue, and that looks like a great opportunity. But I think the testimony from the folks here this evening is impactful. And we have really kind of beaten down the small business community in town, quite frankly. And, you know, I've lived in this town for over 20 years and I enjoy going to these establishments. That being said, what I would, a possible suggestion is that I know we're looking at economic, right? We have several vacancies in the downtown business district. I think we should be focusing on filling those vacancies to help generate more sales tax revenue with new businesses and new growth. And I think we do that first to keep Forest Park attractive, perhaps. And then I think we've also are going to present other options for potential revenue streams. And we also talked about some efficiencies or things to reduce as well. And perhaps a combination of all of those things would put us in a position where that places of eating tax wouldn't be so necessary. By looking at some of the other options would be my suggestion.
I agree. I came to that, even before we got here today. But I do think, you know, we are talking about some other options that, you know, recouping revenue that, is on the books already that hasn't, you know, been recouped. But I do think we have an obligation to our small businesses are the character of Forest Park. We've asked a lot from them, and I think the environment, of our economy right now, is, putting a lot on small business owners that, we have to be cognizant of. And I think it's not an option that has a time limit. But I would be hesitant, you know, to, you know, it's not something that goes away, but, I would, consider this, you know, as something that I wouldn't want to move forward with now. I think, you know, we can look at, you know, parking tickets that exist and revenue that we can get from parking tickets. In a sensitive, responsible way for residents. But we do need to keep in context, the opportunities that exist, that, and the value that, our small business owners have. And yeah, so I'm not a fan of pursuing it right now.
Say, I do agree with, Commissioner Nero about growing, you know, the businesses and filling some of these vacancies and trying to, I mean, I think 2 years ago might have been the first time you pulled these numbers of what it would be.
Yeah, I presented this at the last budget meeting, so yeah, October 2023 was when, you know, based upon the establishments that we had opened and operating at that time, for the anticipated revenue. Some have gone,
Yeah.
some new ones have come though, so.
But so much has changed just
so
in that
much
short
changed,
amount of time,
course.
including, you know, the inflation and
Right.
cost of goods and all of these things, like,
Yes.
I think even what we are hoping we would bring in with this is going to be, at least right now, a lot lower than we're expecting, because people are adjusting their habit, and all of those things, so I agree, I don't think this is the right time. I think what we could focus on now is building up the businesses in the community. I think, but one of those things, we need to be looking at what is in our sort of power as a non-home rule community, and how to grow sales tax generating businesses, and to be, really pushing to get those businesses to be coming to, you know, our business
Yeah.
corridors. I think we could do that, through zoning. There are different things that could, you know, sales tax generating businesses are on the first floor, and maybe the non-sales tax generating are on higher floors. Like, we can be looking at creative ways to be enticing these sales tax generating businesses to, you know, Madison, Roosevelt. I think we create a business district development plan, and that can be sort of motivating us to having this conversation in a couple of years or whatever, when we are in a better place, when everybody's in a better place. Where it's encouraging the sales tax generating uses. We are funding improvements. We could have, we were talking about, like, grants or whatever to, you know, like facade improvements, things like that, those programs. All of that can be geared towards our sales tax generating businesses. So it's being sort of implemented in a way that's enticing these businesses to come here, to stay here, to invest here. You know, again, we're not in the financial position to do this yet, but part of that plan could be, you know, the village sponsors new businesses. You know, we sort of underwrite their first year in the chamber. So we could be paying a new business's first year membership in the chamber and getting more people involved in this. So I think having a conversation about like that business development plan, and it can work us hopefully towards discussing something like this again. It is passed through to the, you know, consumer at the 2% or 1% is added to your bill, right? And the consumer pays it, but then the onus is on the business owner to be collecting that and giving it back to us. So there is a little extra work that we would be putting on the businesses. So part of that plan, again, I think would be figuring out, and I know Rachel was looking into this, like ways to sort of alleviate that additional burden.
Yes.
But for future talks, a nice thing about something like this is we're not just taxing Forest Park residents. This tax is anyone coming into town who's having a meal, they spend $100, they pay $2. They pay $2. So I don't think this is dead in the water, but I'm not really necessarily interested in pursuing it right now.
And I also think, longer term, we can think about, sales tax can be service tax, can we work with our legislators to talk about helping small communities like ours expand what sales tax is.
That is the trend.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about extending sales tax
Yeah.
to services.
And that means, spending time in Springfield and to our legislators about what local communities need, because quite frankly, this is not a small problem, but this is not a problem that's unique to Forest Park. It's about going to, work with our legislators and changing laws.
The other piece is that the legislature's gonna probably take a serious look at just granting, home rule across the board. They're gonna remove, likely that they're gonna remove the, population.
Yeah.
There was a meeting last Monday with the speaker and about 9 mayors, including the mayor of Highland Park, in her role as chairman of the chairperson of the Metropolitan Mayor's Conference. And they almost universally recommended that all the communities be granted home rule power. Because everyone, not everyone, but a lot of communities have the same pension challenges that we have. It's not just source of. And they just want to give communities the flexibility. And the general consensus now is that, the current way of doing things, is separating home rule for communities under 25,000 is based on, kind of antiquated 7 state. We recognize that municipalities, have the expertise to responsibly levy revenues.
So just to clarify here, we are not looking to impose a places of eating tax at this time. We'll be open to discussion potentially in the future, potentially when the economy is better. We can take a look at, village finances, as we go forward too. And, so we're not necessarily, saying that this won't ever happen, but we're definitely saying that it's not happening at this time.
Correct.
Sorry. Okay.
And overall, I just want to say that, our staff and our finance director has just done an amazing job in managing our operations and finance, keeping to the budget, but also addressing our structural deficit, our pensions. We had a 20% reduction in our pension debt from 2023 to 2024. And I think that's amazing. We have issues, we're looking at them, but I think we have, we're all working together to say we're committed to improving our finances and making good decisions. And our department directors, our leadership and the council, we're all asking the right questions and moving in the right direction. I think it's very commendable to say, if you read our audit, to say exactly how much has been accomplished. It's really important to recognize what we are accomplishing as much as where we're headed.
I agree 100%. I think that's a really good point to make, but I also want to point out just in general, and this is nothing to do with the places of eating tax, but in general with our budget, we have, if our expenses, our revenues have gone up 17% since 2022, and our expenses have gone up 26%. And so there's no amount of, great work that our finance director, and she does great work, can do to make up for that. And so, while we are talking about sort of economic development, which is important, and working on Madison Street and, you know, rezoning and stuff like that. And changes that we're hoping will happen on a larger scale. We also have to think today, you know, like, yeah, we can talk about future changes and maybe we'll become home rule, and raise property taxes, you know, like, who knows what's gonna happen? But today, here, right now, we still are suffering from, you know, our revenues being way lower than our expenses are, and that's just a problem no matter how we look at it. So yes, everyone here is doing a great job. But we still can't say, you know, that doesn't just take away from the fact that we are really struggling financially. We're not in a great place.
Our budgeted revenues and, you know, we've still got great opportunities here to talk about parking and vehicle stickers and ticket revenues.
Absolutely.
So are we good on the places of eating tax? Okay. So, I'm gonna kind of clump a couple of these together, parking amnesty program and boot program. Chief Gross recently put together the number of uncollected tickets, that we've had since January 2024. Pull this up here. And it was, sorry. There we go. Okay, so, from January 2024 to mid-July, I think is when, we had these numbers here. Problem with having one laptop. Okay, so, in 2024 alone, we had $1.2 million in uncollected parking citations. We had another $220,000 in 2024 alone of uncollected outstanding local citations. Okay, these are just tickets people refuse to pay. We try to get them to pay, and then they go to collections and people just don't pay them. That amounts to less than 30%. We're collecting. So we're doing all this work of going out and we're, you know, enforcing parking, and people are in turn just not paying their tickets. We're issuing local ordinance citations. That is police department and public health and safety. So code violations, and people aren't paying their tickets. So right now there's not really a consequence for not paying. We send it to collections and then, you know, it sits there and that takes place. So what we would like the council to entertain, to collect on some of this money would be to, institute a parking amnesty program. This would allow people to reduce the amount that is owed. I think last year, the proposal we could do with our collection agency was we could reduce it by 50%. They would have a certain time frame in which they would, be able to pay that. And then after that, they would just be taken out of the parking amnesty program. The other portion of that is to allow the village to reinstitute the boot program. The boot program we had, I believe, Chief, did we suspend that during COVID?
Yes.
And that would allow us to put a boot on somebody's car after a certain number of parking tickets. So right now, what we're dealing with is, you know, we can enforce parking all we want, but if we're not holding people accountable for compliance, the parking tickets don't really mean anything. And that is significant money. And we were talking about close to $2 million in uncollected citations in a year and a half.
You mind if I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
How many parking enforcement officers do we have?
We have right now 2 full-time and 3 part-time. I only have 1 working night shift from midnight till 6 AM. So 2 working 8 PM till.
2 full, 2 part-time, and the administrative costs for processing those tickets. And we're only taking in $392,000. Are we even made whole on the tickets that we're collecting? It's gotta be no, right? I mean, $392,000 is what we collected. That's 2 full-time, 2 part-time. We gotta do something, I guess, right? We gotta do something.
staff in the parking office too.
Right, right. I mean, there's no incentive for someone to pay their tickets because that's what, you know, they don't take their license, right? There's
Yeah, we can't suspend licenses anymore either.
the deterrence of
That's from the
going
state.
to collections doesn't do anything, so, but if you can't drive your car, my God. I think the combination of those two, to me, seem reasonable. I mean, don't get a parking ticket. The amnesty program is the village's way of saying, okay, here's your warm hug. We're gonna cut you a deal. Come on in and let's make a deal. But for those that continue to be, chronic violators, it's costing us money, big money. $1.6 million over a year and a half is big money.
Yeah.
You know, we're arguing we're 50 grand here, 100 grand here. That's $1.6 million
Yeah.
sitting out there. So I think a combination of the two should be looked at, right? I mean, I don't know if the application of a boot, what they cost and what it takes and the risk, and if there's stuff that's happened in the background, that's something that maybe you can help shed light on.
There's an ordinance in place. We've done it before. There's our full-time officers were usually the ones doing the boots, and they would probably do at least one a day. You know, the reality is you're not gonna get 1.6 million. So that's.
Right, right.
But it's gonna be a little more localized, because you do have someone, let's say from Cicero who comes here to visit the restaurant, gets a ticket and just goes, and then never comes back and doesn't pay it. But, it'll be your chronic night parking. Like I saw Jimmy. I know Jimmy Joe Dwayne was in the audience earlier. I know there's a lot of night parking violations on Adams right here outside of the police department. And I try to explain to them on a regular basis that we cite, I can't pull the gun to people's heads and make them pay. But if I start throwing a boot on a car, maybe they do.
What was the rationale for us stopping booting during COVID? Was it just?
Because people were financially in hardships because of layoffs and.
Families were home, you know, kid came home from college, you know, 2-car garage, 4 people living in the house, so. We stopped a lot of things. Yeah.
So I think this would, would address this twofold. We could, collect on some of the revenue that we're likely not going to get if we don't do anything. And then with the boot, hopefully that will get people to understand that if they continue, going forward, because the amnesty program will end at some point. We're not going to just continue to allow people to cut their parking citation costs in half. That will be something that it'll be a tool that the police department can use to, help
And
with
there's no
collection.
consequence, right? I mean, what's the motivation?
So, I mean, I think we're still, I'm definitely in support of enforcement. Given the fact that we are in an employment situation where people have lost their jobs, et cetera, or need cars to get to their work. Would love to have some mechanism that people could, establish payment plans, et cetera.
That's what it-
Okay.
Someone will. $1,000.
Okay.
We can pay them on.
Okay, so we, as long as we make sure that people know that they have payment plans. So, the threat of the boot is there, but we do everything we can to make sure that people don't get it.
Chief, do you see any risk to your officers in applying the rule?
We've done it before. Sometimes if people see it, yes, they do get angry because you're mobilized their car. But often what our parking officers will do is call for an officer to stand by. But okay, so the safety issues covered. And if I could add too, like let's say there was a car booted on Adams right here outside of the police department. Other people are gonna see that, and that might be a motivator to pay tickets or whatever. Yeah.
Sure, it sets a precedence in town too, right? It sets the tone.
I mean,
If
again,
you want to get different results, you gotta do something different.
yes, well, and, it'll encourage people to have the discussion.
Okay, so I'm hearing that the council is generally in favor of going and, instituting a parking amnesty program,
Yes.
and the boot program. Chief and I will work together. We'll actually come up with a formal proposal for it. So, you'll see this again. We have a draft of a plan from what we presented last year, but, at a future council meeting, probably in the next month or so, we'll present to you what that parking amnesty program actually looks like. And then, with, as far as the boot, we have an ordinance in place already, so that should be able to, do we have to, we could start through doing the boot program tomorrow. Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next stuff. We've got, I'm just gonna real quickly on the on-street parking permits. I know traffic and safety is working on that. And so that is part of their work plan for, this calendar year, and when they have more information, we'll go ahead and pass that along. And then I'm gonna just real quick, the last four on there are things that, were not talked about at the last budget meeting. And so these are some things that, staff came up with over between the last budget meeting and now. You got some information about vehicle sticker increase fees. We still have time to talk about that, because we won't do vehicle stickers until, calendar year 2026. Parking meter fee increase, I actually just later this afternoon got some information on our parking statistics, so I'm gonna be compiling what those look like. We're also gonna look at what our neighboring communities charge, just to make sure that, you know, we're not completely undercharging for our parking. So, in the next couple months, I'll be presenting that information to you as well. And then the water meter replacement cost recovery, that conversation will take place, once we get more into our water meter replacement, program. And then the late fee assessment on accounts receivable. So we have late fees assessed on some accounts. So like our water fees, our business licenses. But we have about $20,000 in accounts receivables that there's no repercussion for not paying it or not paying it on time. So we would like to, in the next several weeks, come to the council with a proposal to start charging for late fees on that. One, they're not being paid, and two, it's costing staff time and energy to track people down for certain things. So like, there's just no consequence for not paying your business license. Or I'm sorry, the business license, right? But this would be for like
something,
some of the like,
something that the village paid and would bring it.
Yes.
For rebilling them.
so like, I think we talked about the food inspection fees.
Yeah.
So the village pays for those, we get reimbursed by business owners for that, but if you don't pay on time, there's no repercussion for that. So, and we're having to track people down. So we'll be coming to council for consideration on those. And then the last one was the property tax reallocation, which I know Commissioner Nero,
Sure.
you had some things that you wanted to
Yeah,
share.
no, I do, and I'm happy for the folks that hung around through this meeting, because I think you need to hear this. You know, I did talk about this at the last budget meeting. I've updated some of the numbers. I don't want this to be about. We've been talking about potential sources of revenue for Village of Forest Park. This one is mega. It's a mega source of revenue for the Village of Forest Park. But it's probably a little scary, and it's probably hard to do. And I talked about that last time. And so most people will shy away from it, especially because it involves the school system, specifically District 91 here in Forest Park. So I've done a bunch of research, so I'm not just spewing incorrect facts. I've got some information I want to share with you, because this is not about Commissioner Nero not liking District 91, not liking the children, or trying to offer them or hinder the level of education that the students would get in Forest Park. It's not about that. It is about reallocating what that tax bill looks like for the residents here in Forest Park, and producing or modifying that so a bigger portion comes here to the village, which would be a sustainable source of revenue for many, many years to come. So why am I saying that? So we've got realistically 4 schools here in town. You got Betsy Ross, Field Stevenson, Forest Park Middle School, and Garfield. Grant White is closed. The enrollment of those 4 schools is at 48%, 41%, 33%, and 47%. So not one single school is at 50% capacity, not one of them. All right. The student teacher ratio average in Illinois is 15-1. There's only one school that has a 15-1 student teacher ratio. That's Garfield. Otherwise, it's 8-1, 10-1, 9-1. So we have less students in the classroom, right? You have the schools that are open. The schools that are open have less than 50% occupancy in terms of the students that are there. And I'm gonna hit you with this. So the total enrollment over D91 is 694 students, okay? 690. The budget for District 91 was $26,982,946. You know what that means per student? I did the math. It's $38,000, $880 per student. $38,000 per student. All right. Some of the most prestigious schools in the country are not $38,000 per student. All right. The average, if you would like to know, of K through 8 in Illinois is about $16,000 per student. That's $22,000, 599 bucks above the average in Illinois. So I'm not suggesting that we have to make them average. What I'm suggesting is they just proposed a budget that was at the 26 million and a 4 million or $2 million shortfall in it. Where is this money going? Not my job, right? I mean, that's another conversation. But what I am proposing is that we only have of the sales tax revenue we get in Forest Park, which is $50 million, 50 million bucks. 19 million of that goes to District 91. Forest Park, 7. We want to run a village, police and fire and the community center, right? And public works and run and be able to pay staff and salary, get the things done and all of the services that we grow and love. And we got to do that all with $7 million. What I'm suggesting is it's not going to be a village problem. It's not going to be the folks. How do I say this correctly? It has to be a community problem. We have to rally together as a community to solve this. We have to raise money. We have to go out and create awareness. We'll have to petition for signatures if we're going to get it changed. I can't do it myself, and certainly the village is not going to lead the charge. We will have to do that. So what I'm recommending is a percentage change on the portion that the village gets versus what D91 gets. It takes away several instead of, and I threw some numbers down here. It's not concrete, but a simple 8% change in the portion that the village gets what D91 gets versus the village get would the reality would be $4 million in annual revenue to the village of Forest Park. That would be the difference. That's a real number. $4 million is not 50 grand. It's not 100 grand. It's not 1.6 and trying to chase down maybe 30% of what we can recover in tickets. It's $4 million of sustainable revenue every single year. That changes everything. All of our discussions, the conversations, these budgets meetings, the vehicles, the buildings, the services that we provide, everything changes if we can do that. So how do we do that? Well, how we do that? Oh, it's, let me just make one other point. So over the last 15 years, enrollment's gone down across the board in District 91. Over the last 15 years, they've lost 253 students and already closed one school. All right. It doesn't have to be forever. But if we don't do something about it now, we're going to continue to have real tough conversations here. And over time, the leaf services will go away and the plowing of the sidewalks goes away. Like it or not, we have to do a places of eating tax, right? That's going to be the position. This is where we should put our energy. And maybe it works if we all rally together and go to Cook County and we've got, 10,000 signatures. But the way that this works is you get to a certain point after you've done the research, did the math, had community outreach, discussed it at a budget meeting, know what your numbers are. And then it comes down to this, the moment that we're at right now, which is going out and trying to rally the community and trying to get support for this. Because it's not about reducing the quality of the education of the students, because we could do that. Certainly they can do that with the budget that they have. We just have to dive into that and figure out what portion can we take away from District 91 and cycle back to the village of Forest Park with your existing tax bill and no tax increases and no property tax increases. So what's the ask here? I think we need help. We need to help from the community moving forward in terms of a town hall that would be separate from this. I want my commissioners, this team, the mayor, to come together and rally for the good of Forest Park. That's what we need to do. And then we have to, at some point, Rachel, get legal involved as the next step to get advice, which would, I don't know how that works because that would be an implication on the cost of this. But the campaign and the signatures and the fundraising would all have to be outsourced for us as a community, right? But we have to do it together. We'd have to unify as a council and make this happen. And man, I'll tell you what, wouldn't it be something if going forward, we were able to make this happen. Where else in the world is this village gonna come up with $4 million? Forget it, maybe it's 4%, you get 2 million.
Commissioner?
Pretty
what are-
exciting.
What are you asking us to do?
Well, I think the next step, like I said, is we have to get legal involved just to make sure that
You're asking,
This-
you're asking us to advocate for the change in the way that another taxing body in the village of Forest Park levies their taxes to.
no, so the way it works is that the Cook County, it goes to the Cook County's assessor also, for my understanding, and they decide how the real estate tax bill is appropriated to the different taxing bodies. The Park District, the library, Village of Forest Park, Proviso, D91, et cetera, et cetera. I'm suggesting we approach them as a community and say, we've had enough. We can't survive as a community, as a village with what we're currently doing. And we would like you to move the needle and have less taxes going to District 91 and more going to the Village of Forest Park.
That's by referendum.
I believe it is by a non-binding referendum, but again, that's where I need legal's help. And I also need, and I think the way that you get there is by way of, what do you call, petitioning for signatures to drum up support. Because if you don't have the support, it's not gonna happen. And then you march over to Cook County Assessor's Office, and have a conversation.
Okay, there's a state law that governs this process and the Cook County Clerk's Office is the last step in that law.
Okay,
So I wish you the best of luck, but I personally am not going to. It starts with the property tax assessment and the number of buildings that we have in Forest Park and the Illinois State Board of Education gives each school district a formula that they use to calculate their assessment, which is given to, it's a formula that they use. It's based on the assessment of property taxes, that it's a formula that
Well,
everybody uses.
I understand that, and I know
So-
it's
But it's
scary.
based on law.
There's 5,600 taxable properties is the
Scary.
answer.
I
So
just
it's
know
doing
why.
something, probably a little bit outside of our comfort zone that's probably hasn't been done. But it's not doing something that hasn't been done for the wrong reasons, right? And I don't know, I've never done this, I'm a
I
safety director for a construction company, for
I
Christ's sake, but
understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that the, it's governed by state law. And the questions that you're raising are a factor of state law. And part of this conversation is to talk to how is to talk to about how state law is governed and how state law calculates property taxes for non-home entities.
Right.
And the thing that we need to follow is becoming home rule versus non-home rule, which will help us with that discussion. That's my take on it. And I would rather work on that game rather than to talk about how property taxes are divided or not divided. Having looked into it, I haven't found a way to reallocate taxes between school districts and entities. It's a formula.
It is, and we're capped at, we can levy.
Yeah.
If they levy less, we don't get to then levy more,
Yeah,
like we're
it
capped at our levy. What they could do, and your argument should be in front of the school board, they can choose to levy less and give us a direct tax break. They can say, you know what, our enrollment's down, we shouldn't be levying our full allowable amount. We're gonna knock that down a few points and give all of you First Park a little bit of tax relief. That's what we can lobby our school board to do. And I think that's a great argument. I'd love my taxes.
Sure. Do
And
you think we can approach, so just to put a button on it, can we get direction to, or support to at least approach Nick Peppers? And say, you know what, yeah, he's a lawyer.
And there was also a proposal in the Illinois State Legislature for school districts to have grants to, help small districts, to apply for grants to displace property taxes in small municipalities. It didn't pass this time, but it may pass in the future. I had an informal conversation to see if District 911 would be and applying for that grant, but displace property taxes and help small municipalities like Mercer. So these are things that we can talk about, but the assessment may not be the way that you're talking about, but I think the overall idea of thinking about how to get more revenue, we can keep talking about, and there's ways to go about it. And so I think we're all talking about the same thing, going about it in a different way. And we can talk about it more.
So can I just get clarification? Commissioner Nero had asked if, the council would be willing to give me the ability to talk to SRD in regards to whether or not there was a path forward. Just want to make sure that everybody's on, where everybody stands on that.
Path forward for,
For if there, for the topic at hand, as far as property tax, the allocation, in the sense that was just discussed. I know there's multiple ways. I don't know if you're just wanting me to ask our legal if, Brian will be here later tonight.
I mean, I think a 5-minute conversation if it's something
Sure.
brief.
Don't tell much about it.
Brief.
Okay.
But
So-
then let us know.
Okay, I'll touch base with
Awesome.
legal and, I'll let you know if it is strictly something that has to be handled by the community through a non-binding referendum or something like that, or if it's gonna take legislation at the state level. That's a whole different path. And so at least that it'll get us some direction as to if this is a viable thing to move forward with.
Thank you.
Anything else? I know we've got a reception, that I wanna make sure that everybody, gets a chance to, attend. The last thing on here was, economic development. We're certainly gonna hear more about that. We've got some exciting things that, hopefully are gonna be taking place in the future, so we'll be coming to, talk with you guys about that. I'm really enjoying the level of work that we're doing on that level with Director Glinke and Director Olmsted. And so, gave you guys a little bit of a teaser of what we have in the hopper. And I'm hoping that this fiscal year we'll be able to share some news on that front. So, if anybody else has any other questions, comments? Otherwise,
Give a quick shout out to Director Glinke, since you mentioned him. He is doing a lot with economic development with you, and both of you are working really hard on that. And I think, no offense to like Sal and Kenny, but you guys, always get the credit in the meetings and get thanked for all the wonderful things that you do. But Director Glinke doesn't just do zoning and building, he's also working hard on economic development. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him because he works really hard for this community, and Rachel also to you because you do as well. And of course, Tish, thank you so much for helping with this whole budget meeting. I know it was a lot of work and I asked a lot of you guys, so thank you for everything.
okay, thank you all for joining us tonight. I know this isn't the prettiest of topics to talk about, but it's something that had to be addressed, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here today.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Seem to adjourn.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir. Nero, make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Action.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.